Good morning, everyone. This is your state representative, Brian Shupe of the 36th District. This morning, I wanted to talk a little bit about the voting bills that were recently passed. I know there have been a lot of questions within our community and some confusion about the voting bills that have recently passed the General Assembly, and I wanted to give you a background of what happened in the 150th General Assembly, the current 151st General Assembly, and what we can expect this summer moving forward. So, as many of you know, the bill that just passed allows for mail-in voting through the state of Delaware. That ultimately started with HB 75, which was a bill that would have been for absentee for any reason, voting absentee for any reason, which was to amend the Delaware Constitution. When a bill amends the Delaware Constitution, it needs a two-thirds vote through the House of Representatives, through the Delaware State Senate, and it has to be voted on two-thirds through two consecutive sessions. So it has to be two separate General Assemblies. Now, many of individuals within the Republican and Democratic parties voted yes the first time through to accept having the conversation to say, look, let's look into what absentee voting for any reason would look like in the state of Delaware. We would have two consecutive sessions to have this discussion. We would be able to go back to our residents and have this discussion with them, and then have a discussion on the floor. What we really saw within this legislation, it was very interesting because it came at a time where we had the discussion before COVID-19 happened, and we saw a real life situation of voting for, excuse me, voting for no excuse during COVID 19. The situation came up, and this bill really got seen in a real life situation. And as you all know, not only were individuals able to were able to absentee vote through COVID 19 because of the pandemic, because of the emergency order. But the state legislature actually put in provisions, put into bill and through a law to proactively send out ballots to every single registered voter in the state of Delaware. That got many of us thinking about what this bill HB 75 would do in its current form. And as you started to unwrap this language, it actually started to unravel that the way that the bill was written would take the rules and procedures of current elections, take it out of the Delaware Constitution, and place it in the hands of a majority rule. And that is why a two-thirds vote was not seen in the second leg that was needed of this constitutional amendment for HB 75. And I believe that that was the right thing to do. We do not want to put rules and procedures of elections inside of a majority vote. We want them to be held in the Delaware Constitution. We want them to be over two consecutive sessions so the public has a chance to discuss election laws, has a chance to understand what they mean, has a chance to discuss them with their representatives and their senators. And, these have long-term lasting effects on our electorate, on the people who represent us. So we need to keep these inside the Delaware Constitution. Now, what was seen through the majority party, which is the Democratic Party at this time, was since HB 75 did not pass, there was another bill that was put forth for mail-in ballot at the end of this session, and really, in my opinion, was a runaround HB 75, since HB 75 was not passed, where the Democratic Party said, hey, now that HB 75 didn't pass, we believe that now our interpretation of the Delaware Constitution is that we have the right as the General Assembly to create new rules and procedures for election laws, including mail-in voting. So it was a complete flip from the beginning of last General Assembly, where the majority party who put forth HB 75 said we need to change the Delaware Constitution, which needs a 2/3 vote over 2 consecutive sessions, to this session at the end when the HB 75 failed, saying that no, the Constitution says that a majority vote can change election laws. And that was, number one, unconstitutional. There is no way that a majority should be making future election laws to benefit themselves. And number two, set a dangerous precedent for what elected officials could do to benefit their own party and benefit incumbents. So we saw an attempt, and it passed the state legislature, both the Senate and the House, of the majority party voting to change election laws in the middle of an election cycle. They voted for mail-in voting, and it was only 70 days out from a primary election. So they changed election laws for the current election cycle. I did put in an amendment on this bill in order to make it take effect for the next election cycle. I was not in favor of mail-in voting because I believe there are many things within our voter rolls that need to be looked at first, that need to be changed first before we are ready for mail-in voting. But I put an amendment on it so that if this bill would take effect, at least it would be for the next election cycle. That amendment was voted down. And on the House floor, I stated that this sets a very, very dangerous precedent of allowing a majority to set election rules for the current election cycle. And I gave two examples. If you have a majority that believes on one end that we need very strict verification, 3 verifications, birth certificate, social security card, and photo ID for mail-in ballot, then a majority can just decide that. And that will go into effect this election cycle, and people will have to show those 3 forms of IDs for that mail-in ballot. Now, you may be okay with that, but that can be done within now 70 or 60 days before an election. Or you can go to the flip side of a majority that is very liberal with mail-in voting and have a majority say, we would like to allow mail-in ballots and mail-in voting to happen through our computers online or by phone. And they can do that through a majority vote 70 days before an election. And we asked that through the House attorney on the House floor if this would set the precedent for mobile voting, and they said yes. So this sets a very, very dangerous precedent for a majority to be able to set rules to benefit themselves in the current election cycle. So moving forward, the GOP, the state GOP of Delaware, has been meeting with attorneys in the state of Delaware and nationwide to be able to formulate a lawsuit that will go into effect this summer. The day that Governor Carney signs this unconstitutional mail-in ballot legislation, if he does not sign, it goes into effect within 12 days of the legislation passing, the GOP will ask for an emergency injunction for this to go to the Delaware courts and be determined. We cannot allow any majority, whether that's Republican or Democrat, to set election laws for the current election cycle. We can already see how this can allow incumbents or any party in the majority to benefit themselves They can see how the winds are changing for that election and literally change election laws to benefit themselves. It doesn't matter if you're Democrat, Republican, independent, nonpartisan. You can see how this is very dangerous for our election laws moving forward. I hope that this lawsuit will see a reasonable judge, that we can see that there are procedures in place in the Delaware Constitution that allow for common sense procedures for election laws to take place over 2 consecutive General Assemblies, to have discussion among the people of Delaware, to have discussion among the representatives of the people of Delaware, and that's how we need to move forward. Thank you all. Look forward to talking with you again. We will meet about some local issues next time. Thank you.